This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good, and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining Greg Thompson as we jump into an off-season series that we're going to be doing, kind of going through some discussions of the Bills' cap space, what things they have to look forward to, where we can identify some opportunities to add new talent, and a few other areas. But if you haven't had a chance to join us, come on over to cover1.net. Check out everything we have going on. Awesome draft coverage. If you've been, really focused on the NFL so far this season and want to be able to dive in and get caught up on what we have going on with college football and draft prospects coming up from the Senior Bowl, getting into here to the Combine, getting into draft season. Check out everything we have going on at cover1.net. The team's fantastic. Russell, Christian, Eric, everybody churning out fantastic work. New guys like Zach and Brad being able to bring a lot of really strong value to what we have going on here. What we're going to be doing over the next couple days is a brief video and podcast series talking about a series of articles that I'm putting together to kind of talk about the cap space, the pending free agents, and then maybe a couple wish list guys that are coming out here. So today's show is going to be based on the article that I put out talking about how much cap space do the Bills really have. And there's a few different things that get into what is available and the numbers that people see versus what is actually out there and what's usable in that space. So in the article that I posted, you'll see that in the description for the show here tonight. I referenced some of the work that's done on Spotrac.com. I actually also referenced some direct screenshots of this NFL CBA that I went through. And there's two pretty financially nerdy areas that I focused on. The first one is called the cash spending floor, and it's often referred to as the 89% rule. The 89% rule means that in every 4-year rolling period, every team has to be able to spend at minimum 89% of the cap in cash over that time period. So that doesn't come up all that often. Teams are normally able to keep up with that because you're, cutting checks for the contracts that you sign. The difference is that some of the medicine that Aaron and I have talked about that Brandon Beane had to take on behalf of the team, especially in 2018 with a $70+ million dead cap hit, that impacted the salary cap, but it's not actually cash that's being spent by the team. So over the previous 4 years, and again, it's always a 4-year rolling period, the Bills were 14th, 29th, 29th, and 25th in cash spending in the NFL. Well, that 2016 year where they were 14th is about to fall off the books. Right now, if they weren't to add any new contracts or extensions, which obviously they won't do, they would be 29th again. So based on all the calculations that are out there, we show that just to get up to that 89% minimum over the 4-year period, the Bills have to spend in excess of $50 million in cash in addition to the existing contracts that are out there. So on the one hand, that's very exciting. That's a new talent that could be added. Those are extensions that can be given out. And that's new money that needs to be spent. So that's the positive side of these kind of fluky and weird rules that are out there. The other side of that is a really odd one, and it's often called the 30% rule, and it actually only comes into play in the final year of the CBA. So for the last year or two here, you've heard the NFL Players Association and the league negotiating back and forth and talking about the CBA that's out there, their interest level in being able to reach an agreement on an extension and being able to play that forward. That's still possible. You actually saw some tweets just in the past hour here on this late Thursday night, February 6th, coming out from leadership of the NFL Players Association that they had meetings today, that they were productive, they were moving forward, and that they have not reached any agreement, but are confident in their ability to do what's best for current, former, and future players. If they're able to reach an extension, it may make some of this moot. From everything that I've read, I don't think that's going to happen here in the next month. And what they're planning for is in the final league year, which is this year. The current CBA was negotiated in 2011. It runs through 2020. That no contract can extend from this final year into the future, so signing a deal that starts in 2020 and goes into the non-CBA negotiated area, it can't have more than a 30% increase in any one given year. Now, the reason that comes into play is obviously you don't want someone signing players to let's say a crazy $101 million deal where $1 million of that is in 2020 and then $20 million per year in each of the next 5 years. And you just backload everything because you don't know what the new CBA is going to be, or that you're kicking the can down the road into a season that may not even get played, and you're just getting them cheap in this 1 year. So there's logic in why the Players Association negotiated this so that it's there. The challenge that comes in is with the extensions that are coming up. So 3 players in particular, Matt Milano, Deion Dawkins, and Jordan Poyer, are all playing under very reasonable and cheap deals compared to what their current market value would be. So Matt Milano's at $2.1 million, Jordan Poyer's at $2.95 million, and Deion Dawkins. The challenge that comes up is that if they were to reach an extension early, they would have to be able to give them an increase of salary in 2020 beyond those numbers I just listed, the 2.1 and 2.9 and $900,000 numbers, and that they would then be able to have to be less than a 30% increase. So in any other year, you would simply add on the extra money. Let's use Matt Milano as an example. Let's say he gets a 4-year, $48 million deal. That's simply nice and easy, $12 million a season, everything's clean. Maybe they would do in many cases, hey, Matt, we want to reward you. We want to give you part of that money now in a signing bonus. You're still going to make the normal $2.1 million in salary in 2020, but we're going to give you $20 million of that up front now, so to lessen the future years. That only leaves $28 million in the subsequent 4 years. You spread that out at a $7 million salary over each 4 years. You have the $20 million in signing bonus that he gets a big fat check now. You spread that out over the 5 years. That's $5 million per year. Each of the 5 years is a $12 million cap hit. It's nice and easy, but he gets a salary of $7 million each year, but he gets that big chunk of money up front now. The challenge is that doesn't change his 2020 salary. And with this final league year, they would actually have to increase that. So in the case that they would do the normal circumstance with the $20 million signing bonus, only $4 million of that counts here in this first year. With the $2.1 million in salary, that's a $6.1 million cap number. What they would have to do is actually accelerate some of that money, kind of almost tear up the 2020 salary that was there and give him a number closer to $7 or $8 million this year, and then have it go up by 30% increments going into the future years, or at least 30% from this year into 2021 for the rest of the contract. So that's going to complicate what we normally would have done in proactive extensions for Milano, Poyer, and Dawkins. I didn't mention Tre'Davious White because Trey has the 5th-year contract offer. So the fact that they're going to be able to use the 5th-year option for Trey is going to make it easier because that's already up to 11 or 12 million. You can negotiate the extension beyond there. It's going to be able to put us in pretty good shape. So, but the 3 contracts that are there, those are for Deion Dawkins, Matt Milano, Jordan Poyer. I think most fans would like to see them extended. And if they do get extended, they're going to take up more of that cap space than what we had initially planned. So when you talk about the $81 million in money that's out there, and there's a lot of guys in the chat right now talking about how much money the Bills have to spend, that's true. But more of it is going to get soaked up in extensions on existing players than what we normally would have in years past. It's going to put us into a position where there's a little bit less available to go spend on acquiring new players than what we would have in years past. Now, this will actually pay off down the line. We're going to increase some of that front-loaded money and have easier contracts in the end, where some of the later years of a Jordan Poyer won't be as painful. Some of the later years of a Deion Dawkins or Matt Milano will be a little bit less. So some of the other comments that are coming up in the chat here, it may bring up questions about possibly not extending it and making them have to choose between there. I think obviously Trey White is an absolute priority. He's someone they're going to want to negotiate as soon as possible to get a deal done. But it may make them choose between 2 out of 3 with Dawkins, Milano, and Poyer, or maybe even 1 out of 3 and letting 2 of them walk. So I personally hope that's not the case. I'd like to see all 4 of them back. But this is going to put them in a position where it may not be possible to proactively re-sign all of them in this coming year in 2020. We may be able to reach an extension with 1 or 2 of them early, kick the can down the road until during the season, see if the new CBA gets extended or early next offseason, and then possibly even one of them looking at getting into a franchise tag or a transition tag. So just something that I thought was a little bit interesting. I heard it talked about on a couple other shows, so I actually went through and read the CBA. Again, in the description for the show here, you're going to be able to see the link for the article. There's another one dropping tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. By the time you listen to this, it may already be up. I'm going to do another brief pod on that to be able to go through and talk about that. One's going to focus on which of the 19 unrestricted free agents or restricted free agents and exclusive rights free agents, I actually talk about that in the show, are coming up here and who we may want to keep. So we're going to do a series of these shorter pods here over the coming days and early week to be able to give a little bit of insight on this series, talk about where we want to go. The idea is going to be this show talking about the amount of cap space that we have, the next show talking about the Bills players whose contracts are expiring and who we want to bring back. Then I'm going to go into some offensive wish list players and some defensive wish list players, and then maybe a summary show at the end of that to be able to kind of pull everything together. So really looking forward to being able to talk to this. I appreciate everybody jumping on the chat here tonight. Going to keep the show brief and be able to go over a little bit more each night over the next couple nights to be able to share more of what we have going on. Looking forward to being able to put a little bit more out there in the articles and descriptions that we have. But looking forward to being able to get this and help you guys understand what the options are, who we have to be able to go after, where we can really spend that money. I'm going to spend a good amount of time. I'm going to mention some of the real shiny top-end guys that are out there that I know a lot of fans know the names of. But I'm going to spend some time really looking at who I think the value guys are that we could be able to bring in and be able to bring a little bit more to the table, like we saw in some of these recent deals, bringing in Beasley and John Brown and Quentin Spain for $2 million, John Feliciano for $3 million. We're going to use some of those same logic to be able to identify where there's a few of those opportunities to bring guys in at a value that we think are going to be able to make sense. So appreciate everybody jumping on tonight. Going to be a brief show. We're going to keep it brief over the next couple nights so that there are nice and digestible bites for everybody. Check out the article series that we have dropping each day over the next coming days, and we're going to be able to pull all this together really well. Looking forward to being able to get you guys prepped and ready for the Bills offseason so that you guys have the best info for your water cooler talk. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo. We are out.